I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast, thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyour-ear for details.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Well, I'm very glad it rained last night, as forecast, because do you realize the extent of our kind of no doubt ancient association with rain at night and getting a good night's sleep? Are you aware of this?
I am, because it's part of the profound psychology, isn't it, of feeling that the world's a reassuring and good place.
This
and
is
about
something
to prosper.
This is something that Spotify have obviously noted. Because if you go and look on Spotify for kind of sleep sounds or sleep music, and believe you me, there's an enormous area devoted to those things because people just put them on and leave them on for 3 or 4 hours or whatever. They don't just want it for 10 minutes. But here I've just looked up sleep and rain, and it brings me 10 hours of continuous rain sounds, thunderstorm sounds. You can get 10 hours of thunderstorm sounds, gentle rain sounds, 10 hours of relaxing rain sounds, heavy rain and thunder for sleep, calming rain and distant thunder. Isn't that absolutely extraordinary, really? That I never realized
You just choose the one that suits your sleep pattern.
Well, you
distant thunder.
Yeah, you presumably let yourself drop off. You hope you're going to drop off within 15 minutes or something. And if you're not, it's just going to keep going in the background. It's absolutely extraordinary. I don't know why all these people are.
Well, there's something emotional about the idea of rain, isn't it? I'm trying to think of rain songs now. Crying in the Rain. You know, Rainy Night in Georgia.
Rainy Night in Georgia. A lot of Southern songs actually about the rain because I went to New Orleans a few times, and according to my observation in New Orleans, it rains every afternoon between 3 and 4 o'clock. It's so humid. It just has to let go mid-afternoon, you know. So
it's like San Francisco with the fog, isn't it?
I suppose so.
The fog is in there in the morning. It clears exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But in the morning, it's shady. Isn't it? There's weird places that have that particular little microclimate.
Yeah. But Southern music and, yes, Rainy Night in Georgia are absolutely right. There's a wonderful song by the Atlanta Rhythm Section, the ugliest group in the history of popular music, called All Night Rain.
Also than Crabby Appleton.
But definitely. They made Crabby Appleton look like the Walker Brothers, let me tell you. But they have a song called All Night Rain, which I heartily recommend. Anyway, you were saying you have a stack waddy.
Well, it's a stack waddy. It continues a theme that we started last week, which I thought was quite interesting, actually, which is I'd pointed out that Kylie Minogue was a year older than Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Say it once more.
It is good, isn't it? It's just this whole idea of people being older than you think.
Say it once more.
Kylie Minogue is a year older than Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Now, that's worth being a Patreon supporter for, or on its own, that piece of information.
You have to drink it in, don't you?
You do. Carry on.
Well, I suppose it was also coupled with the fact that Debbie Harry just turned 80, didn't she, the other day?
Did.
So it's just about, it's about people who are older than you think and people who are younger than you think. And if you put those together, just a strange collisions occur. So here are a few more. You got to tell me which one's the oldest, right? Kim Wilde or William Hague? Kim Wilde or William Hague?
Oh, dear. I'm going to say Kim Wilde.
Yes, she is, actually. But only by 4 months.
But only by 4 months.
Isn't it bizarre?
William Hague, we have a strange idea of his age because he appeared at the Conservative Party conference, didn't he, as a 15-year-old or 16-year-old or whatever, making a speech from the platform.
He did. But the abiding image is him at the Notting Hill Carnival in the baseball cap, which did for him, didn't it? That was the kind of I love Arctic monkeys maneuver that finished off his career.
That's never convincing coming from any politician, but particularly from William Hague. I interviewed William Hague about a year ago. He was very good value, actually.
I'm sure he was.
So
here's another. All right.
Go on.
Who's the eldest, Lulu or the king?
Oh, my goodness. Now, that's an interesting one. Okay, the king must be, was he born 1948?
He was. Well done. Okay. 14th of November.
Okay, right. So he's older than Lulu.
He's not. She's older by 11 days.
Wow.
They were virtually born on the same day. I just love it, though.
That's very good.
Lulu is only slightly older, but she's not the king. Okay, here's another one. Sir Keir Starmer or Dame Joanne Catterall of the Human League?
Oh, God. I've got to give it to Joanne Catherall. She's not really Dame Joanne.
No, she's not. Just because he's Sir Keir Starmer, I thought I should.
Okay, right. I'm going to say she's older.
No, she's Keir Starmer. But by 16 days, they're both 62. Okay, right. A couple more. Kamala Harris or Paul Bonehead Arthurs of Oasis?
I'm going to say Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. 9 months. And the last was Rick Astley or David Cameron. It's just something bizarre, just having them in the same frame, isn't it?
You can imagine the two of them doing a duet to Never Gonna Give You Up, can't you? You really can see that. I can see that really easily. I'm going to say David Cameron is older.
David Cameron is... No, it's Rick Astley, actually. Rick Astley by 6 months. But those things are peculiar because if you look at people who had hits late in their life and people who had hits early in their life, again, they're hard to equate, aren't they? I mean, again, one more, okay? Who's older, Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys or Andy Fraser of Free? Admittedly, no longer alive, but, in terms of when they were born.
Right, who's older? I'm going to say Neil Tennant's older.
No, actually, it's Andy Fraser, but only by 2 years, which is incredible.
Because Andy Fraser, you see, you often talk about as your favourite, one of your theories about popular music is people remain frozen at the age at which they have their first hit.
Yeah.
And Neil had his first hit when he was quite old. He was 31. 31, there you go. Whereas Andy Fraser was writing All Right Now and so forth for free when he was 15 years old.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's just absolutely astonishing. I'm amazed nobody's made... Actually, there's a guy somebody should write a book about. Andy Fraser. Just... was he in John Mayall's band? I think he wasn't he, before he joined Free and wrote all those hits. And all the time was gay.
Was gay, exactly.
It didn't come out until about many years later.
Yeah, All Right Now, all those songs that seemed so heterosexual when sung by Paul Rodgers, certainly,
Deeply heterosexual.
Yeah, fantastic story. Yeah. I love all these things, though. One last one, Alan Bennett or Petula Clark?
Alan Bennett or Petula Clark. Now. Okay. Oh, good grief. I'm going to say Petula Clark's older.
It is Petula Clark, yeah. 92.
92.
There you are. You see, Petula Clark, 92, Lulu, 76, yet having hits at precisely the same time.
Petula Clark, interesting case, like Andy Fraser and other people. If you go back and look at them, Petula Clark was a big kind of film star, radio star before she was a pop star. And
that's right.
There's a series of films, very cozy films made about working class life, featuring a family called the Huggets.
Yeah.
And Jack Warner is Mr. Huggett, and I can't remember the name of the woman. Kathleen something is the mother. And Petula Clark is the tearaway 13-year-old teenager, whatever. And
stage brat, wasn't she?
Have you ever been in that bit of at the BBC? You must have done. At Wogan House, what they now call Wogan House. It used to be Western House around the corner from Broadcasting House.
Yeah.
And they have a little studio just off reception where you go to do things down the line for loads of radio
I've been in
stations.
there.
You've been in there.
Little tiny booths, aren't they?
In a tiny booth. There's a very nice little person runs reception in there, and you just sit there. And if you sit there long enough, you see the whole world come in and out, popping in to do a kind of two-way with Radio T.
That's right. Yeah. Richard E. Grant, then Petula Clark. That's right.
And last time I was in there, Petula Clark came in. I couldn't have been more impressed. I simply couldn't have been more impressed. Petula bloody Clark. That's a big star.
That huge star.
For a long, long time. So she's 92, you say?
She's 92.
And Alan Bennett.
I think 90.
Is a sprightly 90.
Sprightly 90.
God, it's
it is incredible, isn't it?
Is he the last one of the Beyond the Fringe foursome with us? I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is. Alan Bennett.
I'm trying to remember who the fourth one was now.
Jonathan Miller.
Jonathan Miller, that's right.
Jonathan Miller, yeah. So, while we're talking about legends and Petula Clark and so forth, this week I went to the oldie. I was a turn at the oldie literary luncheon in the rather grand surroundings of the National Liberal Club in Whitehall. I do like those places.
They're fantastic.
Enormous Victorian pile. Kind of like Victorian lavatory architecture on an absolutely
amazing tiling, isn't it?
Yes, just absolutely extraordinary. And you get the smell of Windsor soup and treacle
cabbage,
port.
It used to be cigar smoke, probably still is.
I tell you, I had such fun, and it was so wonderful to bump into some unexpected people. Peter York was there, style leader of the 1980s. The man who wrote the book about the Sloane Ranger and all that.
He completely epitomises the 80s, doesn't he? Yes. You say Peter York, you just have a mental image of that period, more so than anybody else. He just remained there somehow.
Yeah, and I was standing on the terrace. They have a very nice pre-drinks thing overlooking the Thames. And this lady came up to me and said, "I just want to say I really like your books." And I said, "Oh, that's very kind of you." And she said, "Well, I kind of appreciate them because I'm sort of in the music business." I said, "Oh, really?" People say that could mean absolutely anything.
Yeah.
She said, "Yeah, I'm with a band." "Oh, really?" She said, "Yes, Steeleye Span." I looked at her. I thought, it's Maddy Prior.
I would have been so excited, as you were.
I was very excited.
I loved Steeleye Span.
Yes, absolutely. And so we got talking about times I went to see them at Hammersmith Odeon and so forth. And we were talking about the time, which I think we were probably reminiscing about on a podcast not too long ago, in I think 1976, when they were managed by Tony Secunda, who had the bright idea of getting a load of publicity by getting them to shower the audience in the Hammersmith Odeon with their fee for that night's performance in cash money, let go from a net at the top of the place during their final number. £8,000 apparently.
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot, I suppose.
It's a lot of cash.
And if you were showering people with £8,000 in members of the public in 1976, you had their full undivided attention. I would have thought.
You could imagine the unseemly scenes.
Oh, yeah, I can
even
imagine.
The most peaceful hippies would have been scrabbling to pick up fivers.
And also the great truth of cash money, paper, folding money. If you drop it from a great height, it does not fall directly down.
No, it flutters like confetti.
It wafts.
Yeah.
With the inevitable outcome that people reaching quite innocently for a passing fiver elbow their neighbour in the eye socket, their eagerness to get it. Anyway, she was reminiscing about Tony Secunda.
But you did this brilliant thing, which I must tell because it was so funny. Dave got up and said, in your speech, you said, I have no shame at all about suggesting that you might buy my book later on, which will be available, and I'll be there to sign it. And I've just met somebody here who when playing the Hammersmith Odeon, showered the audience with their entire fee. And if you come and buy my book, I'll tell you who that person is. Which is just such a great manoeuvre. I'm assuming that people did.
Well, yeah, got a bit of that. It's you never know. The worst thing, you know what it's like. You're giving speeches or little addresses or whatever. Often the temptation is that as an idea enters your head at the last minute, and you think, "Shall I start with this?" And very often it goes wrong.
And then you're going to wrong foot yourself. You've set up a series of points you're going to make, and now there are a load of hurdles in front.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was all right. And she was Maddy Prior. What a delight it was to talk
I met
to
her
her.
too.
Of course, Steeleye Span.
Peter Knight of Steeleye Span once came to the Old Grey Whistle Test office. Do you remember him coming in?
Oh, don't.
Peter Knight, I was so thrilled. Yeah, with his ponytail and
his flat cap.
Yeah, Pleased to See the King was the masterpiece for me. I love that. The Blacksmith. Incredible record.
Yeah. But she was, so Steeleye Span is still going. She's the only kind of original. And she says, they just, you can kind of whistle up new members outside at the gates of music colleges. They're just endlessly turning out really good musicians.
Yeah, I'm sure.
24 years old. If they're female, they've all got a little black frock somewhere. They can don it in case they're called upon to play in Rod Stewart's band or Steeleye's band or Dexy's Midnight Runners or whatever. I was very taken with her. I was absolutely thrilled to meet her.
You're tuned to Word in Your Ear, the longest continuous conversation in rock and roll.
News in this week about Steve Miller. I'm sure you saw that. Steve Miller had the most courageously lame excuse for cancelling a tour, when I think it was pretty well known that the ticket sales were not in any way robust. But anyway, his official excuse was the combination of extreme heat, unpredictable flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, and massive forest fires make these risks for you, our audience, the band, and the crew unacceptable. Unacceptable, it's a great word. So you can blame it on the weather, but our tour is cancelled. I love that idea that it's not our fault. It's the world's fault. It's probably the president's fault actually for not being sufficiently climate aware. But it probably would have been a little bit more honest to say. Actually, times are tough and we appreciate that, and money's tight, and we're going to think of scaling down, doing smaller venues, or not doing it at all. But anyway, that's what he's announced. But wouldn't you be fed up, Dave?
Well, I'll tell you what it made me think about, because, people have, since time immemorial, have cancelled tours at the last minute for various different reasons, the political situation, or our bass players broken his foot, or I don't know what, all kinds of reasons that no theatrical troupe in the world would ever use for anything ever, because in the theatre the show completely goes on even if the star's not there. So this has gone on forever. And you can take with a pinch of salt their excuses. But I think the thing that makes it particularly difficult nowadays is that not only do these gigs involve significant investment in the tickets, they probably involve significant investment in, travel, accommodation, reorganizing family matters, work matters, whatever, because it's undoubtedly the fact that, most people going to these gigs, and Steve Miller's clearly not the hottest ticket in the United States, but he obviously playing, he was projected to play quite big venues. People are traveling some distance to see these things, aren't they? It's not like you nipping down the Shepherd's Bush Empire on your bike.
In America, by definition, you're bound to be traveling quite a long way.
And so if you call off this, it's for many people, it's like having a holiday called off.
Oh, totally. They would have structured their year around it. And that's money that they might have spent somewhere else, doing something else, or another ticket or another type of holiday. I think you'd be aggrieved. And also the idea that you have people's money for a long time.
Well, you do.
Which you can stick in some account somewhere on a nice tidy earner. So, I mean, in many respects.
I don't know if they're necessarily earning a lot of money out of it. But, it draws your attention to the scale of touring nowadays, the number of people. I think we were talking about not long ago when Pulp finished some tour. We saw a picture of the kind of tour party, didn't we? There was a lineup shot. And it was as many people as it would take
50.
As it would take to mount a production of West Side Story.
It was incredible.
On stage and off. It was that number of people. And that's Pulp. Who are not the most extravagant group. It's not, I don't know, it's not Rick Wakeman is Six Wives of Henry VIII.
Oh, yeah.
So presumably, if you get near the beginning of a tour, there must come a point in a tour plan where you've either got to press the button or not. Because everybody starts being paid, don't they? You've hired the caterers, you've hired the trunking company, the insurance, all those other things. And if you're going to have to carry on in venues that are only going to be 60% full, well, you're losing your shirt, I would have thought, very quickly.
But also there must be an element too about that whole thing about kind of your devotion to a group. Bruce Springsteen, if you saw him tonight, and you were told he was playing it in 6 months' time, you'd probably go again because the kind of level of fandom, if you like, and the level of guarantee as regards the entertainment you're going to get and the warmth of that connection is enormous. And I wonder if it's the same with someone like Steve Miller. I mean, obviously he's got his fan base, but I went to see Steve Miller at the Albert Hall. I think it must have been about, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yes, that's quite a long time ago.
I really enjoyed it. I loved Steve Miller when I was, but when we were at college, we always played up to the point of Abracadabra when I think it became something different. I loved him.
Just remind us for a second of the Abracadabra couplet, because there may be younger listeners who are not aware.
Go on. Abracadabra, I want to reach out and grab you. Is that the one you're talking about?
Once again.
It's Abracadabra, I want to reach out and grab you.
There you go.
That would be hard to get off the ground now. That's
People
true.
say poetry's dead. Go on, carry on. So you saw him 15 years ago, and
and he was fine. He ticked every box, and he was Steve Miller, and he still looked pretty much the same, and it was fine. He played all things off, the Joker and Fly Like an Eagle, all that. But my feeling is, I've done Steve Miller. If I was told he's playing the Hammersmith Odeon tomorrow night, I don't think I'd go because I feel I've done it, and I don't know how different it's going to be, and would it be any better? I don't think so. So there's that element of just how fond you are of somebody too.
But you see, I suppose that's
you may have gone out too often. I think
that's one of the things that's changed about fandom, isn't it? I tend to agree with you, with the odd exception. I think I've seen them. I've done that. That's fine. Yeah. I really enjoyed it, and that's fine. They're not going to be any better next week.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays there are lots of people who will go and see acts for as long as they're there. They'll go and see them like fans of Huddersfield Town will keep going to see Huddersfield Town, no matter what division they go down to or however disappointing the season might be. They will go because that's who they are, and that's fair enough. I kind of understand it with football, but it's been extended into music more and more, hasn't it? By people playing for longer and longer times. So yes. So Steve Miller, don't blame it on sunshine. Don't blame it on moonlight. Blame it on the boogie.
This is Word in Your Ear, down the rock and roll rabbit hole since 2007.
So talking of gigs, it was, of course, 50 years ago this week. 50 big, count them, top 20 years since me and my mate Steve went to the Lyceum Theatre in the Strand in the days where it still had gigs, when it wasn't the home of Lion King merchandise or whatever it is nowadays. And we went to see Bob Marley and the Wailers. And that was, of course, the night that the famous, legendary live album was recorded, out of which came No Woman, No Cry, for which I'm still waiting for my royalties for the lusty
backing vocal,
the lusty backing vocals that are provided, that were clearly an enormous part of its success. And it makes you think. 50 years, Mark, 50 years. So if you go back, if you do the usual calculation that I always do for no good reason whatsoever, other than it just interests me, it's 50 years since Bob Marley played the Lyceum. If you'd gone back 50 years from the date of Bob Marley playing the Lyceum, you would have arrived at the publication date of Hitler's Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. It would have been, the publication of Great Gatsby.
Was it?
Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush was released exactly 50 years before that. That really is just, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is, really. Yeah, it's the idea that you could have gone to the cinema to see The Gold Rush when it opened, and then you could have gone to the Lyceum to see Bob Marley.
50 years later.
In one lifetime. You could have done that.
Yeah.
And now I can't remember where I was reminiscing about it this week, droning on about it. And somebody said, are you going to talk on the podcast about what it was like? Because we hear it was a bit hairy, it was a bit, there was a crackle of crime about the place. Well, yes, there was. Because I remember it was a meeting of people, kind of unique in my experience. You'd gone to gigs at the time. You'd gone to the average gig. You'd gone to see the Sharks or Chili Willy and the Red Hot Peppers, or Steeleye Span or whatever. And you tended to have an audience of kind of white, hairy people. That's who the people were who went to gigs. They wore check shirts and Levi's and desert boots. You know those people, Mark, don't you?
I was one of them.
You were one of them.
Yeah.
And then when you went to Bob Marley, there were those people. Those people were there, because I was there. I was one of those people. But there were I remember people who struck me as being African, dressed in kind of almost national costume.
Yeah.
And I looked at them, I thought, I wonder if you're from the Nigerian embassy or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, kind of dressed as though for a wedding or something in an African country. And then there were I think what we learned to call rude boys from Tottenham or Brixton or whatever, who
pork pie hats.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they were
maybe not even that.
But it was definitely a kind of a meeting of different tribes that wasn't always wasn't quite as harmonious as you might have wished. But I think it's worth stressing.
It wasn't one love.
No. It's worth stressing, and we have talked about it before, but that gig's a classic case of it. Gig going in those days was potentially dangerous.
It was. There were fights. There was theft. There was crime.
There was. Do you know why?
Fights, certainly.
Do you know why? Because you could turn up and you could buy a ticket. It was like football had similar risks for just the same reasons. That nowadays, if you go to football, it means you've got a credit card, you've got a job, you've got a season ticket. You know what I mean? You turn up with 5 minutes to go, and then you watch, and then you leave. And that's why football is dominated by 57-year-old disgruntled white men. And where
work in finance,
absolutely, yeah, or anything. And in the same thing about gig going. Gig going is dominated by people who've got access to a credit card and a fast internet connection. Gig going in those days wasn't. It was people who just turned up, or people who wrote off to Keith Prowse, or sent off their stamped addressed envelope and a postal order and got back their tickets, or people just turned up on the door. So there was always a sense of just anything can happen. They weren't the average tribe. It didn't work in that way. So yes, there was all of that frisson of petty crime around the fringes of those kind of gigs in those days.
But didn't it seem exotic and exciting? Because what I remember, I wasn't at the gig, sadly, but I remember buying the record very soon afterwards. And, and being aware of Bob Marley, I'd followed him up till then, but that really brought it home to me. This was a completely different experience. The coded kind of lawless patois that they talked in, the dreadlocks, the skanking dance moves, you know what I mean? The red, gold and green flags, poster of Haile Selassie. The whole idea of Rastafari, we're sitting around talking about what Rastafari might be. It was a whole new experience. It's a bit like, I don't remember eating pizza till I was 20 or Chinese food till I was 20 because they weren't available. And reggae music was a whole exotic new experience. And also the words used, what a tribulation. I remember thinking that was an amazing line.
Yeah.
The rain will fall, but the dirt is tough. We're going to dance to jar music. That's just incredible. We sit around talking about, what is this? What is Rastafari? What is
the name of the manager? Don something, I think, who stands up at the beginning. This, I want to tell you,
is a Trenchtown experience. All the way from Trenchtown, Jamaica. That's right.
And what I remember is just the great rumbling sound of them. They didn't sound like anything I expected. Because, Chris Blackwell in his... they'd made those records largely in Jamaica and then sent them to Chris Blackwell, who had, in the case of the first album, Catch a Fire, actually overdubbed things like pedal steel and keyboards because he wanted the instruments that would be less alien to the ears of
familiar to the college circuit.
And
white boys, age 20.
And he mixed the live album, didn't he? That came out of that, and it captures that kind of the thing I didn't expect that absolutely took me by surprise was the kind of heft of them. that when the bass drum went in, there was woof. It felt like the end of the world. You know what I mean? There's something magisterial about them.
Compressed your chest. Yes, right. Got the wind out of you.
And they had all the time in the world. They felt actually, bands tend to disappoint you and all bands do this, by playing slightly too fast.
Yeah.
The Wailers didn't do that. They played, if anything, slightly slow. It's like we take our time. We do this in the way we feel like doing. We let every gesture land.
Yeah.
The immense confidence of them. And you stood there thinking, I've never heard anything like this in my life. And I don't think I will ever hear anything like this again. And I think I was right in that. So there you go. 50 years ago. Absolutely extraordinary. Talking of, this is a segue to stuff on Island Records a long time ago. I had that extraordinary experience this week of going to what I suppose is a launch of the new issue of The Making of Nick Drake's 5 Leaves Left arc, which was somebody had the bright idea of taking a kind of, I suppose you call it a narrowboat on the Grand Union Canal, which you can join round the back of King's Cross Station nowadays. It's all very gentrified round there, Granary Square and all that. So for years, nobody in the right mind went round there, did they?
No, well, that Virgin Records was based, wasn't it? A series of narrowboats at one stage, all their offices, weren't they, on the canal?
Oh, well, that was Little Venice. I don't know. Was it the Venice? Yeah, Branson used to run the thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were gathered on this narrow boat, and we set sail. And if you go in an easterly direction,
you were actually moving. You weren't just bored.
Oh, Mark, let me tell you.
Okay.
Let me tell you. No, absolutely. So there we got on the boat, and we're all just sitting, looking across at each other, and then it went in an easterly direction towards, you're eventually going towards, I don't know, you're going towards Shoreditch and so forth, But it you come very quickly as you pass the Guardian building on your right, and so forth, and the London Canal Museum and all that. You come to the opening of a really long tunnel. You must have seen that.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Okay, the tunnel, for people who know this area, I must go nearly a mile underground, and it goes under Chapel Market. Yes.
Yeah.
So we went in there, and the little platform party. Pete Perfides, friend of the pod, was MC, and they had Joe Boyd, who was obviously the person who produced and discovered Nick Drake, and Richard Morton Jack, who we've had on the pod. All these people we've had on the pod, actually, biographer of Nick Drake. And we had a guy, his name, sorry, it slipped me for the moment, about whom I'll tell you more in a moment. Anyway, we got in the tunnel, and when you get in the tunnel, it's pitch
So you're
black.
plunged into darkness.
It's pitch black, Mark.
With the ominous sound of dripping from the bricks above.
Pitch black. They cut out the engine, yes, and then they play these very early demos and Nick Drake.
Fantastic.
And there you are in the middle of London, and you're in the quietest place in the UK. Because down there, you can't hear anything at all. And so what we were listening to was a variety of kind of early recordings done with a view to Five Leaves Left, or things that made it onto Five Leaves Left. But the most interesting thing was the fourth bloke whose name I can't remember, who was a very kind of sophisticated looking man in his 70s, I suppose, retired chap. He'd worked in the oil business most of his life, overseas, Turkey, Africa, all sorts of places. And in 1967, he'd been at college in Cambridge with Nick Drake. And he was a kind of friend of Nick Drake. And Nick Drake was due to do a show, I think in early 1968. And he said to him, before I do this show, I really would like to hear what I sound like, which gives you an idea of what a vanished world we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And this guy had a solid old Grundig tape recorder, reel to reel, of the kind that very few people have. Now, I know this might be difficult to take on board for younger people, but, obviously there was a time when, not everybody had a phone that recorded. But before that was a time when not even everybody had a cassette that recorded. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there was a time before that when the notion of a reel-to-reel tape recorder with an actual microphone, oh my God, that was just extraordinary. Anyway, this guy had one and was a bit of a scientific person and, could make it work and so forth. And so he and Nick Drake and somebody else, I can't remember who else. Robert Kirby, I think, sat in a room while Nick Drake just played these songs. Yeah. And as Joe Boyd said later in the evening, the amazing thing about Nick Drake is he never made mistakes. He said when we were recording him with, I don't know, Dave Mattox and Dave Peck occasionally, Richard Thompson, additional musicians, we get at the desk, we'd turn him down and we'd just listen to the other musicians because we knew he wouldn't make a mistake. He would just be keeping on going, which is extraordinary when you think.
And when you hear some of those things, he plays exactly the same thing each time, doesn't he? Just note for note, finger for finger. He'd obviously he'd rehearsed it, he practiced so hard.
And he was only 18, 19.
Yeah.
I mean, he's barely inexperienced at all. But yes, he was extraordinary. So, he played these some examples of these recordings. There we are in the dark, as you say, occasional drip of water you're
it's
hearing.
Lovely. You're in the tunnel.
We can't see each other.
So you turn the engine off. You just float.
Turn the engine off. Yeah. Anyway, then we started again, and the guy told us the story. He said, I recorded this stuff, and Nick, left. Was it Fitzwilliam College?
K's college, Fitzwilliam. This was his college friend, wasn't it? That's right. Yeah.
And then he finished his degree and went off, did various jobs. I worked in the oil business and so forth. He said, I'm very glad. He said, over a long period of time, I obviously became aware that Nick had made some records and then nothing had happened with them. And that he died in the mid-70s, and that's very sad. And then I was dimly aware years later that there was a resurgence of interest in him. And then I started to think, do you know, I've got that tape. And you're thinking, I think I've got that tape. And he's living overseas. And he's thinking to himself, well, thank God I didn't take it with me to kind of East Africa or whatever, where the climate would have had a harmful effect.
Would have eroded it. Where did he have it then?
It was at his home. He said, I always thought, I think I know where it is.
That's astonishing.
And then years later he went back and there it was, He was obviously a fairly organised person.
Imagine the nervy moment of putting that on the first time. You've got to transfer it to digital as soon. You may only have one chance to play it.
He told the story about taking it to a transfer place that he's about, I think in Bristol or somewhere, I can't remember where, place that transfers stuff from reel to reel. And, knew it'd have to be done first time, digitised and so forth. He's obviously not stupid. This tape could have ended up in the hands of somebody who might just not known what to do, whereas he clearly did, and he did a lot of checking on the lab before he went in there and so forth. And what he didn't do is go in there and say, "I've got a tape here of Nick Drake." He just said, "Oh, I've just got a tape, kind of old mate or something," And then
because there'd been a bootleg risk, wouldn't there, if somebody had thought, "Hello, wait a minute."
Well, it's interesting because the other person who was there, actually, I should have mentioned Callie Colomon, who's the guy who runs the Nick Drake estate from a recording point of view. He was there, and he was talking about how it's not uncommon for people to approach them saying, "We've got a tape of Nick playing live," and it's copied off something else with a bit of overdubbed audience noise and so forth. And anyway, we're going to have Callie on the podcast in due course, so he can talk about that in more detail. But it was an extraordinary experience to see this.
You told me about it, but I didn't realise that you were in the tunnel with the engine off in pitch dark. So you say that's a brilliant idea because you're in the middle of this bustling metropolis, and yet you're just a few feet above you. There's a kind of main road with double-decker buses,
and you can't hear it at all. You can't hear it at all.
That's a really clever idea.
That's extraordinary. And then we emerged from the tunnel down to Colebrook Row, that where near our mate George used to live, and then we went down and went through the lock. I think the prime mover behind making this happen, I may be wrong, was somebody who worked for Universal who happened to be a big narrowboat enthusiast and thought, I know how I can make this work. So she was the person who operated the locks.
Really inspired idea.
But it was certainly different. So and that's coming out or come out on was it 4 LPs or whatever. CD as well, the original album remastered, and then all this stuff that was done around it. And Joe Boyd was, as ever, always interesting. Just talking about just how much work they did on it. It wasn't just Nick didn't just come in and play it, and they ran the tapes. They thought about it for a while. They tried different arrangements. They tried different additional instruments. But Nick Drake was always very clear what he wanted. So there you are. We're still talking about it all these years later.
This is Word in Your Ear, from Aardvark to ZZ Top and back again.
I was intrigued this morning to wake up to the story of the chief executive officer caught, how shall we put this, playing away during a Coldplay concert. Do you know about this, Mark?
No, I don't know.
Okay, Coldplay are on tour of the United States, playing intimate venues of 60,000 in Boston, Massachusetts, and it's a quite a common practice at American sporting fixtures that I think the so-called sky cam, the camera that surveys the audience, might at certain points in the entertainment, generally at half time in the basketball or whatever, will zoom in on couples in the audience and invite them to kind of plight their troth.
Oh, this is brilliant. So we picked the CEO and his niece.
Invite them to kind of, in extreme cases, propose, or I don't know what, cuddle up. It's just a standard thing. And apparently they started doing this at Coldplay concerts. And one of the couples that they happened to light upon, up in the gods, I think, were a middle-aged couple. And she's facing the stage, and he's standing behind her, got his arms around her, very, very cuddly, very lovey-dovey. How can I put this? Don't look like husband and wife for a moment.
I'm naturally close.
Absolutely.
After all these years.
and she looks up at the screen and sees herself and immediately goes, "Oh my God."
Yeah, because normally people see themselves on the screen, start waving, they nudge the person next to them and they point at the screen and they wave, and she probably goes, "Oh yeah."
She literally disappears. She just ducks out shot, leaving him.
I've got to Google this.
It's just absolutely astonishing. And he's turned out to be the CEO of a software company or something. And she's the head of HR.
No.
And we shouldn't take amusement. I mean, this is probably the breakup of two families, but my God. And Chris Martin apparently says, "Oh, they look as if they're not supposed to be with each other."
just to compound their misery, in case you haven't watched.
But that's the peril that's live entertainment for you. So you can go and find that. So who have we been talking to this week, Mark?
We talked to Susie Quattro, good value. What a trooper.
We didn't talk to Susie Quattro. Susie Quattro talked to us, Mark.
Talked at us. Yeah.
She was, what a trooper.
Really good. She was really good.
God,
I really admired the fact that she said, no bones at all about her. Nothing, wasn't even trying to be modest. There was no false modesty. I realised when I was 8 or whatever that I was charismatic.
Yes.
And I had the X factor, the charisma button, and from then on, I just pushed on forward, And I really admired that. I thought it was fantastic. She's very good. Who else we talked to? Well, John Otway. I think we mentioned before we talked to John Otway, who's
we did
extremely good value, who's now done whatever it is, 5,200 gigs. You talked to David Ackles, didn't you?
I didn't talk to David Ackles.
Not to David, sorry.
On account of him being dead since 1999.
No.
I talked to Mark Brand, who's written a book about David Ackles, great kind of mysterious figure, recorded 4 albums, three on the Elektra label in the late 60s, early 70s. And one of which was called The Greatest Album Ever Made, but it didn't help it sell at all. And he's written,
that surely was a mistake.
Well, yes. But, that's the kind of thing that happens, isn't it, in the world of reviewing? Thank goodness the world of reviewing has gone now, Mark. You won't get that kind of problem.
No danger of being called the next, next big thing, the next Bob Dylan or whatever.
That won't happen at all. So all that stuff is out there.
And we got a nice email, didn't we, from Kenny McDonald, who tracked down David Ackles in the 90s and interviewed him and written a piece for a fanzine called Ptolemaic Terroscope.
You get that at Smith's?
I know, that's fantastic. Yeah. Now, the Illustrated London News, Razzle, and Ptolemaic, 2 copies of Ptolemaic Telescope. But no, that was very good. And we had some nice comments on after last week's thing. Somebody, who was it? It was Quazo Watt, who said that we were talking about Velvet Sundown. He said, according to Brian Eno, not many people bought the first Velvet Sundown album, but everyone who did went on to regret it.
That's very good. Very good.
So, no, we've done all that. And we had a birthday guest. And anybody listening will know that top tier and the most loyal subscribers will get the chance for us to go through, rifle digitally through their record collection. They can show us what they've got. And on the occasion of their birthday, to throw a conversational log on the fire, which was the turn this week of Gianluca Tramontagna.
And now it's time for Word in Your Ear's Birthday Guest of the Week.
As you know, our most loyal top-tier subscribers and supporters get to let us look around their record collections and to chip in once a year on the podcast with a conversational gambit. And we're joined by Gianluca Tramontagna. I hope I've got that right. Very good to see you.
Close enough. Thank you, Mark. I love that introduction.
Great. So tell them, what is your... Actually, I think we know what your theory is. You just sent us an email and we like the sound of it. Go on, explain.
Okay. Well, it started off with something that I think David said, actually, about that everyone has their own personal Bob Dylan, right? Because he's sort of all things to all people, kind of. And it got me thinking, yes, well, the different... I'm going to put this as modestly as I can, that everybody else except me is wrong. And my Bob Dylan is the true Bob Dylan.
Okay.
It is a hill I am willing to die on.
No, fair enough. Carry.
Because I think of his life, one of his early quotes, this voice of a generation, I think of him a little bit his life like the life of Brian. He's a genius, a poet, voice of a generation. But one of the first things he ever said was, I'm just a song and dance man. Yep. And no one listened to him. No, you're not. You're the voice of a protest singer. He didn't really write that many protest songs at all. He wrote a handful. He didn't really march at any protests. He didn't really, he wasn't present during the sort of heady protest days very much. And there was that funny story. I think Joan Baez might have mentioned it when Dylan was at the 1963 Martin Luther King historic speech. He kept saying throughout the whole thing, "Oh, is Mahalia Jackson here? Is she going to sing? What's she going to sing? Oh, well, I can't wait to see her sing. I can't wait to hear her." And he is in fact just hysterical. I think of him as almost like a comedian, really. You think of his quotes, his early quotes, have a clean head, always carry a light bulb. He's asked, how many folk singers are there? He says, it's 136 or 142. His songs were talking, I'm going to get this wrong as always, but the Mountain Bear Picnic, Talking Mountain Bear Picnic, Massacre Disaster Blues. And he has a lot of songs like that, even through to Time Out of Mind. Highlands has some funny lines in it. His 115th Dream, all these things.
Talking World War III Blues.
Talking World
On the same album as Blowing in the Wind, isn't it? I mean, you kind of think it's all the serious stuff.
There you have it. Yes. And if you go online, of course, he gets the Nobel Literature Prize and he goes, I got to play a baseball field in a town nobody's ever heard of. Can't pick it up. He did eventually, but it caused an uproar. And if you go on YouTube, there are these funny clips. He gets stage invaders. He lets them stay. He tells the security to back off, lets one of them sing it, actually. And someone yells out "Free Bird," which is sort of in America. And guess what? He starts playing it.
He would.
And my final exhibit, you hear about the walkabouts and things like this, and the apocryphal one of him thinking he's visiting Dave Stewart, but it's Dave the plumber. Possibly not true, but very believable. I have to present, I think, my final case, and I will open it to the jury, is that I think the funniest 3 minutes of comedy ever, perhaps, is Jack Nicholson is presenting him with an award. They are both completely loaded. Jack Nicholson is reading off the cue this drivel.
Is this the Hall of Fame?
It's not the Hall of Fame. It's a Hall of Fame, I think. I advise everyone to look up, because Eric and Ernie are going to have to move aside, much as I love them. This is a comedic double act that is primo. Funniest 3 minutes you'll see. You will laugh out loud and roll on the floor. If you Google Bob Dylan, who did I say?
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
Thank you, Dave. You'll see it. And the last time I saw him at the Beacon Theatre, just before COVID, I kept looking at him and thinking, God, it's like Tommy Cooper, really. He looks funny.
Yeah.
He looks funny.
Yeah.
But everything he does is just funny. And I present my case to the court.
You get no pushback from me at all.
It's an open door.
Because, I've always taken seriously the idea that I'm just a song and dance band, because he's a musical and physical act. He always has been. Half the pleasure of Bob Dylan is looking at him. It's just watching the way he behaved. I mean, particularly when he was like 35 or whatever. Slightly less so now, because he's an elderly gentleman, somewhat inhibited. But, I certainly don't think the whole idea when people talk about interviewing him and so forth, they always feel that he has a load of secrets that somebody's going to tempt them to share them with the rest of it. He doesn't have any secrets at all. He's a performer, and the comedian comic parallel is very apt, actually, in the sense that if you took the material of Morecambe and Wise and gave it to somebody else, it's not funny. It's just simply, it's not even beginning to be funny. Bob Dylan, is a performer. He is the greatest performer of his own songs. The occasional one gets done by somebody else with some success, but nothing. He is genuinely inimitable, and that's a kind of comics. That's a comic skill, it's the way they hold the head. It's the way they, they finish a line and so forth. So you get no argument from me. It's a song and dance band all the way. What about you, Mark?
Well, I think the same. If you listen to those really early things when he was doing the clubs, the whole idea when you're doing the clubs and you're 19, you're trying to, make a name for yourself, is to give people some kind of variety and give them something they might just latch onto. And every one of those sets, it might have had a kind of Masters of War in it, but also had songs like All Over You. I'm sure you've heard that. And they're just really, really comic and brilliant. And the light and shade in those sets is extraordinary. And we've just kind of finished up at a position where a consensus has decided to view him as one particular thing, but occasionally you get glimpses of it. Dave and I are always quoting this great line he used to do on stage where he used to tell those terrible gags, and that one about my wife and I were happy for 30 years and then we met, and this is the same guy, who said, hard rains are going to fall, and I love that. And again, it's just the way he parcels up what aspect of him he wants us to see, and we have no idea what he's like in real life, except that he's sitting there. He's mucking about, he's playing his ukulele, and he's doing all manner of things that have no connection really with the kind of slightly dour and furrowed-browed character that we know on stage.
Yeah, so the final proof really is that that Mark always says that the great test of a true rock star is you spend a lot of time thinking about what they're doing right now. And in the case of Bob Dylan, you do think that, and you think he'll be doing something funny.
Yeah, funny and unpredictable.
The idea of Bob Dylan doing something golf. Normal is kind of funny, because the cliche is that he's always furrowing his brow and reading Baudelaire or whatever, and he's not. He's watching... He's watching Doncaster Rovers on cable or whatever. The which is funny. The very notion of him. I know famous. Sorry, I'm bored for Britain on this subject. I have met him. And if you go to a room where there is Bob Dylan, it's kind of almost comic. You think, crikey Moses, that's Bob Dylan. It's you're actually in a room with somebody who's genuinely inimitable, but you've spent half of your life looking at pictures of him and hearing things he said, and those things sort of become amusing as a consequence of your strange relationship with that person,
So does he look like Bob Dylan in real life?
He looked like, he's one of those guys. I've interviewed Bob Dylan and I've interviewed Neil Young and I've interviewed Bruce Springsteen. And in all three cases, you think to yourself, there could not possibly be any more Bob Dylan in this room than there is at the moment. You know what I mean? He has provided the maximum amount of Bob Dylan. Not a disappointment in any shape or form. And he also has that trump card, which I would have thought he shares with the aforementioned Jack Nicholson. Is most people in show business want you to love them. He doesn't give a fuck.
No, that's true.
And that's a really strong card.
Very attractive commodity, actually.
Yeah. In fact, I think his most important gigs have been his worst gigs. Live Aid. He did a big Letterman show that was atrocious. I think he's Brian trying to tell everyone. There's a scene where Brian opens a window and they're all there, and he says, "Fuck off." And I think that's what he's doing.
Live Aid, I just admire the principle of having that amount of pressure, and you've got to finish that event, and you are the absolute finale, and putting so little thought and effort into what you're going to do. And in some way, and as with his two colleagues, and that was just, in some ways, it was admirable because it was so.
It's fearless. Fearless is what it is.
He just didn't care. He would not have woken up in the morning in a fetal position thinking, "What have I done? I've ruined my reputation." People will be talking about this 40 years later. They are, but they're very impressed.
Yeah. I think he was just trying to reinforce the fact that he is not a genius or a voice of a generation.
Well, he's a genius as a conduit. He's a genius as a performer. He's not the common notion of Bob Dylan is a genius like Tolstoy or something.
Yes.
He's not that kind of thing.
Different kind
He's
of
a performer. He's a genius like Fred Astaire. It's that kind of thing. He works in motion. It's inimitable. So you get no argument from us.
Thank
you'll have to think.
Much.
You'll have to think of a more controversial theory for next year.
Yes, all right. So are we all? So there's two takeaways I'm going to take. First of all, I guess we're all going to die on the same hill, and that's fine. We'll be in good company. Yep. Second of all, I'm not crazy after all. All right,
not crazy. You've got a year to think of your follow-up.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.